Good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking the long walk over to the far corner of the building here. Say again, is it worked? I hope so. Have you done another session with me? Not yet? All right. Have you done a session yesterday afternoon on enterprise app deployment? Nobody? Great. No overlap then, right? Who has done a Windows 10 session? You will hear some similar things between Windows 10 and Windows 10 for mobile devices. When we did these titles, we have to do them months before the actual event, and then we have to invent titles that don't disclose anything, right? So it's Windows 10 Mobile, that's the official name of the operating system that will be available for phones and tablets. Right? There is a Windows 10 desktop and there's a Windows 10 mobile. Lots and lots and lots and lots of similarities. If you hear similarities, that is normal because it's the same operating system, basically. So we'll cover all of that, or some of that in the session anyway. So my name is Alan Muse. I work with Microsoft for nearly 20 years, waiting for my gold watch or so, I think. And I work today, or these days, I work in Microsoft Services, previously known as MCS, as a solutions architect for mobility solutions with Windows devices. So I work a lot with enterprise customers and adopting Windows 10 at this point in time, but because I usually am involved in the early stages of enterprise customers evaluating a product. I work closely with the engineering team on bringing that feedback back to the engineering team so that the product becomes better for enterprise customers. And obviously also work a lot around EMS or the enterprise mobility suites, the management, Azure Active Directory, those kind of technologies that are needed to manage these devices. So I'll talk about Windows 10 Universal Business Apps and app deployment and management of these apps, specifically focusing, and I'll point out the little differences between eventually a desktop versus a mobile device, right, in terms of what they can and not do in terms of applications, etc. Who of you considers themselves as an application developer? Oh, quite a few of you. That's great. Right. I won't show any code. Just making sure. So when we think about, and yeah, I need to give away a phone. I haven't decided yet on how I'm going to do that, or when I'm going to do that. So it's going to be a surprise to you and to me on that. Okay. Yeah. All right. It's by the way, it's a 930. It's LTE all bands, where it is, and GSM quad band. So pretty useful globally, I think, and unlocked. You have one? Well, I'm doing my demos on an 830. Well, yeah. Good. So when we think about mobile applications in the enterprise, right, if we look at the store and app availability on Windows Phone and on Windows Desktop for 8.1, I hear a lot of my customers say, hey, we like Windows Phone, right? We would like to adopt it, but our users don't want it. There are no apps for it, right? There's a lot of lack in the app space as such, and we absolutely know that's a challenge. And with Windows 10, we also bringing some technology parts. There's more than technology to solve that problem, right? But technology parts that will help, or will help in solving that type of problem. Enterprise customers also are adopting iOS and Android next to Windows, and they want to see how can we do cross-platform development, because we're not going to develop for one platform, and if the one platform is kind of an outlier there that we can't support the other two, it becomes a difficult platform to adopt, right? When anybody using Windows Phone in their company? Quite a lot of you, thank you. And if you adopt it then, right? There's a big problem around store apps, licensing of store apps, the need to have a MSA. I know customers who have a spreadsheet with private MSAs and passwords they don't share with their users for corporate liable devices. Anybody like that in the room? That dares to? You and you, right? So you're not alone. Because people want to control these devices, and the MSA, or AKA the Live ID, is a problem, right? It's a consumer identity that has a consumer legal relationship with Microsoft. If you read the fine print when you sign up for an MSA, and that is a problem for many enterprise customers. And then all the side loading across Windows 8.1 and Windows Phone 8.1 around applications, getting line of business applications that you may develop for your users onto these devices. It's confusing, it's different depending, etc., right? And we want, or we need to solve that as such. App management, obviously, how do you manage these apps? So let's first talk about the app platform. Obviously, last week we had the Build conference in San Francisco where there was a lot more talk for developers around the app platform. But I think most IT professionals and IT managers also need at least a high-level understanding of how this app platform is evolving and what it means for them, because developers are going to come to the IT manager, so to speak, and ask, we are developing these apps, and do we have the right infrastructure, etc. So a good understanding of that is absolutely important. So if you look at today, Windows Phone 8.1 was 8.1, and you do a Visual Studio project, you can choose for a universal app template, right, for 8.1. And that's great. The moment you start to develop that app, however, you'll see that you will have to add components for phone, desktop, and then common shared components in that project. And that there is a difficulty in managing the project in that way. So it's not although the final result can be a universal app, you compile it, but the one compilation goes to the desktop, the other one goes to the phone. The one goes up in a phone store, the other one goes up in a desktop store, right, for modern applications. So there is still a big diversity, basically, although it's getting better and better, or it was better than before on 8.1. So we want to make that better. With today's Visual Studio previews that you can install and download, or download and install in that order preferably, right? You'll be able to develop universal app packages, one single app package for both platforms. It's become a universal app, uses the same controls, uses the same tile infrastructure, notification infrastructure, what have you. Everything becomes a single application that you develop for the Windows devices, and then you can deploy to any Windows 10-based device that has the universal app infrastructure or runtime, if you want, on that device, right? It will automatically adjust and adapt to the environment it runs on in multiple ways, and I'll show you, demonstrate you a few of those that you may encounter in line of business applications too, right? You can develop, obviously, with your preferred C#, or you can do HTML-based, JavaScript-based applications, right, that will run on all these Windows platforms. With JavaScript and HTML5, you'll have access to the APIs. You'll be able to call on operating system services just like you would do in a XAML C# type of application, right, if you want to go that way as such. Obviously, at Build, we did some announcements around bridges, and then we have been working for a while with Xamarin, a partner that does the .NET framework on other platforms, right, and ports C# to other platforms. And it's important to understand the difference between the two, right? With Xamarin, if you're a Windows developer, you do XAML and C# development, you can actually develop in the same language, in the same context, for iOS and Android, right? The bridges that were announced at Build go the other way around. If you are an iOS shop, you develop iPhone, iPad apps, right? You have no concept of C# usually. Well, Object-C, C#, they resemble each other a little bit, but you're not in that world, right? With the Object-C and the Swift bridge that is being built and that will be released later, you'll be able to develop in those languages using the APIs that you're used to from iOS, and then compile them as a Windows application, such as a universal Windows application. And then the other way around, there is some tools that you can run, basically an Android app onto a Windows app, and it will use there are tools to enable the user interaction, etc., to be similar on the Windows app and kind of remove the material design elements from your Android app, right? It's not the same like with iOS, but it is ability to run. You have a question over there? I have been forwarding the slides, and you have not seen them. Are you all asleep? I'm sorry about that. Let's see. I need to be on another PC, right? 8. So let me quickly go back and show you. This was the slide I was talking about when I was talking about 8.1. No magic here. And then I said universal apps, deploy them to all these devices, and talk about the cross-platform development tools that are starting to get available, right? So there are two ways of looking at that. One, you're a Windows developer, you want to develop for the other platform, then it's Xamarin. The other way is when you are an other platform developer, you want to develop for Windows 2, then there are the bridges that are coming for you, right? Any questions about that? Apart fans, show me the slides, please. No? Thanks for calling it out, by the way. I don't know if that's worth the phone, though, right? All right. So when we look at both platforms, right, we are developing universal apps, and I just said, we started out by saying we have, let's say, the phone OS, and then we have the phone OS on small tablets, right, like 8, 7-inch tablets, or even smaller. If you think a 15, 20 is a 6-inch is a tablet too, some people think so, right? The mobile OS will be available for those types of devices, and then the desktop OS is the usual desktop, laptop, Surface type of devices that can be ARM. So desktop x86, mobile ARM, and x86, right? Now, I have here a HP Stream 7. It's an Intel Atom-based, SoC-based device, 1 gigabyte of RAM, etc., right? I can upgrade it to Windows 10. But it is missing for the mobile side a few things, right? If you know phone, it has a few buttons on the front and specific drivers for that. OS is, or this device doesn't have that. So the navigation, if I put a mobile OS on this, will be more difficult. The mobile OS will not be available as something you can buy in the shop and install on a device. It's an OEM product, just like the phone OS is an OEM product, right? Was an OEM product. So Windows 10 Mobile is basically an OEM product. So the desktop has a desktop, runs desktop apps, can run modern universal apps too, right? It's, but the mobile device has no desktop at all. Doesn't run Windows 32 apps, is touch optimized first and most. Obviously has functionality to support a keyboard and a mouse and a larger screen. If you saw in the keynote, Joe Belfiore did a demo with a prototype device that he plugged into let's see, extender or something like that, right? Connected to it, the mouse, etc., became available, and the app scaled to the environment he was using. It scaled to a desktop environment without showing a desktop. It's a universal app that he was showing, right? Word or Excel or PowerPoint or Outlook, those kind of apps from Microsoft would be universal apps. And then the start menu, obviously, is something that is coming back to the desktop. And the start screen is something that is remaining on the mobile environment. It doesn't have a start menu at all. It only has a start screen. Looks a little bit of tablet mode. If you switch a tablet on Windows 10, if you install Windows 10 on a tablet, you'll have tablet mode. So it's immersive, no Chrome, those kind of things, right? So a desktop doesn't have phone functionality. A mobile will support phone functionality. We'll have a phone stack that supports making a phone call, basically, and all the SMS and those kind of things natively. And then from app support perspective, both will support universal apps, and the mobile will continue to support the Windows Phone apps, while the desktop will continue to support the previous Windows 8.1 universal apps as well as Win32 apps. You won't have PowerScript on a mobile, those kind of things. If you're an IT pro, you have a question, sir.
Yeah, small tablets like the HP and
Yeah.
radio for GSM or LTE, will the phone app run on that?
Well, if it's an Intel-based device, right, I'm not saying it's not capable of running that mobile OS. It will depend on the OEM. To release an upgrade for the mobile version if they had it on a desktop version of 8.1 today, right? I'm not sure how many OEMs are going to do that. They're probably going to want to take advantage of new hardware to do specific things and probably position their new devices, right? If I look at a website from HP on the HP 7, and I apologize if anybody from HP is in the room, right? It looks like the device is already being retired by HP at this point in time, right? If you look at downloading drivers and that kind of stuff, they no longer seem to be available. So you're going to see tablets with new functionality, the keys probably pre-painted on the screen, if I can put it that way, right? That kind of stuff that are more appropriate to the new version of 10. Yes?
You're saying for the phone stack, just the SMS and phone call stuff, not the mobile data?
Well, no, there will be obviously desktops that have a mobile data extension and right, to support LTE on the road, that kind of stuff, or, yeah. No, just like today. So our only apps like Mail, Calendar, etc., are universal apps. If you are using the Windows Insider and you are looking at the Windows Phone versus the Windows Desktop, you'll see the same apps being available. The same with Office, etc. Although you won't be able to see it today because the Insider build that you can install on a phone doesn't allow you to access the beta store and install these apps, right? It doesn't even have an Office app left on the phone as such, if you want. So this is my phone here, right? It's running a little later build than the public available build because you see Word and PowerPoint is on there. And this is Outlook. Obviously, if I have Outlook full screen, I see all the things. First thing I see from a design perspective is the hamburger menu. I know there is religious discussions about hamburgers on the internet and development, right? But if you go and I guess most of you have been at least looking at an iOS and an Android device, you will see the hamburger menu being there too, and also being there on the left upper corner of the screen. So we put it exactly there, right? Because users, if we want to enable users to switch easily, we really need to make it easy for them. So they find the stuff in the same way as they would find it on the other platforms today, right? So the hamburger menu also flips in and out, right? And if I go here and open Mail, if you're asking yourself, is anybody asking themselves, how does it do that, the phone screen on the PC screen? Does everybody know? Everybody knows? All right, there's a tool you can download, the Microsoft Downloads, right? And that's called Share My Screen. And anyway, So you see that here the menu is exactly the same because I'm actually running the same app on this Surface and this phone. It's the same Outlook app that I'm running on it. It behaves a little different because this is obviously a phone and my screen size is different, etc. But I have the same things. Here, if I look at my hamburger menu, I have the same options, right? I can switch to calendar, I have my settings, I have my smiley, tell Microsoft this is a great app kind of thing, right? You'll see I have exactly the same thing. If I do settings, you'll see the same elements show up. They just show up a little differently, but consistent for the user to use, right? Consistent to get access to these different elements. And that is across all universal apps. If you look at Outlook or and so forth. Now, just to make sure, I'm running nearly the same universal app, but not absolutely the same universal app, because you see the one is 71 and the other is 72. I haven't updated the app on the laptop, I think, right? Yeah. On the laptop is a little older. But it's the same app, basically. It's a universal app. It runs on all these Windows 10 devices as such. And there are a ton of these universal apps in here, right? If we go back to my slides, you can develop them yourselves, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Built into the OS are a ton of universal apps. We try to develop as many functionality that the user sees on the device as a universal apps. So even the settings are universal apps that we can update the background from the store, basically, right? All these can be updated. Settings, the built-in apps. The one that is in parentheses there is Skype for Business. It's not pre-installed. All the other ones will be pre-installed on the Windows 10 mobile devices as such, right? There will be Office and etc. just built into the operating system. All the Bing apps or the MSN apps, I think, I should change that. Project Spartan or Microsoft Edge, all universal apps, right, that are built in and can be updated from the store. This enables us in the Windows as a service world to update this app layer for users on a constant basis, basically. Obviously, I don't know how many of you from an enterprise background are now saying, hey, I want control, right? We'll talk about that. So one thing in the cross-platform development space I want to point out too is that we are changing the way apps are scaling on the desktop and on devices. We have standardized on these percentages, and if you go into a universal app on the Windows 10 device, you will see that you can change the scaling of the screen exactly according to these percentages, right? But the scaling factors are actually very comparable to what you see on iOS and on Android. And it's an important element here because there are tons of applications for iOS and for Android, and there are not enough applications for Windows. All these developers develop graphical resources for these applications, right? Want their application to behave in a certain way when it scales, and they don't want to redo these resources within their application for Windows. So let's make it easy for them. If you have an app that scales the way iOS expects it, scales the way that Android expects it, it will scale in the same way on a Windows device. That's why this is important. So we're helping developers to develop for Windows. We really know that we are behind, so we need to do, from a technical perspective, whatever we can do to help developers, in addition to what they're doing today, develop for Windows. So now we have all these universal apps, let's say. How are they being distributed? Obviously, most users will get an app through the Universal Store, right? That's how apps will be there. The store will have more than apps. There will be media, right? Video, audio, what have you, there, music, obviously, right? And so forth. And there is one store. Also from an organization's perspective, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, you have this one store you can work with as an organization. And you'll have more control over how you work with that app store, and it will be more easier for you if you want to develop apps for the store to submit them to the store as apps that only you and your employees have access to as such, right? No longer a cumbersome certification process for you. We'll scan your app for malware, but there will be much less hurdles to get your app in the store if you want to put it in the store. And we're bringing technology that is making it easier for you to put your apps in the store for your employees. I will talk more about that. So the store on a PC looks very much like this. And if I go back to my phone too, right, and open the store here, I'll see, hopefully, and it disconnected, so let's give it a little bit at the same store, right? I have my hamburger menu on my phone. My PC is behind in terms of how it shows, but we have the flexibility, right? If you don't want the same user interface, we have guidelines on how to do it, but if you want to do it different, you can still do it different, because you see what is the hamburger on my phone is actually a pivot on the top or a tab design on the top where you see the home, apps, games, movies and TVs, right? They're hidden in my hamburger on the phone. They're not like that on the device. And obviously, my account is still there, has the same options than my account on the phone. I'm using the same account on both devices. And we have the same kind of approach in terms of applications and pivoting it through and so forth. And you'll also have app categories. I'm showing the app categories here. Maybe I need to do it here. My phone is not reacting. Anyway, you'll see the categories here. I'm showing these because if you are Contoso, you're the customer, and you want apps in the store for your employees, you could create the Contoso category in the store, and I'll talk how that works. And that category is only visible to you and your employees. Nobody else in the world will be able to see it. It belongs to you. You create that in our store, and you add applications into it. You'll also be able to add actual applications that are already consumer-based applications, if I can put it that way, store applications. You can put them in your category, right? Because you will be able to buy them for your employees and license them, and they will sit in that category as such. So it's a very similar experience. He woke up from one to the other, right? So people will be able to maneuver through this app, this store app, in a very similar way on their laptops, desktops, what have you, for modern apps. I was somewhere else. Here I was. So today, when you want to distribute apps, users will go with their MSA, their Live ID, they register the device, and they can buy applications from the store using the store app, right? On 8.1, that's how it works. We allow you to create a company app portal, and that is usually an app that comes with the MDM system. Your devices are getting managed, and on the MDM system, they usually have an app. AirWatch has one, Mobile Iron has one, Windows Intune, Intune has one. I keep saying Windows Intune. It's Microsoft Intune, right? Has an app that is getting installed, and the app allows you to publish other apps from your MDM, your mobile device management system, into this app, and users can then install the app. You have a question over there? I'm not sorry, I missed the beginning of your question.
I understand that it makes sense for Windows apps on a mobile device,
It would probably be. I'm saying probably. I'm not the one that can announce anything like that to you at this point in time. But yes, if you have Android apps, it wouldn't be the Play Store you go to, or a user wouldn't go to the Play Store to download those apps. If you are going to encapsulate, but that's basically what it is, Android apps to be installed on a Windows device, it will be done with your MDM system, yeah. Again, I don't know how that's going to work at this point in time, but it's a good question, right? You'll have to ask a Windows question. Honestly, I haven't thought about how I'm going to give it away. But it's a good question, right? I'll follow up on that because I want to know too, to be honest.
For the interim, right?
Yeah.
Already got an app developed for another platform,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to accelerate adoption. They need to understand the management of that
Yes.
near term, and then if you need to transition and rebuild your app or whatever.
Yes, no, absolutely, yes. And organizations are going to have apps for the other platforms, right? Yeah, absolutely. You know, I follow your questions completely. How do we get these other apps on a Windows phone? Is that Intune or how is it going to work? I don't know. In Windows 10, how do you get apps on the phone? All right. Now that we're through that. So on the Windows 10, right, how do you get apps on the device? Obviously, a user can still have their own device activated with an MSA, Microsoft account, right, and sign in with that MSA, go to the store and buy apps. Nothing changed there, basically. You can also do a company portal, again, MDM controlled application that points to apps as such. They allow you to develop and manage your own apps, the life cycle of your own apps that you have developed. They now also enable you to connect in the store, and I'll go through how that scenario exactly works, but you can go and license apps, download them to your MDM environment, or link into your MDM environment, depending on how you want to do that, because there are offline scenarios and online scenarios for this, and then distribute those apps with your MDM system, right? So you can push these store apps that you have purchased in the store through your MDM system as such, through your mobile users.
So APX across the board for mobile and for desktop?
I didn't get the first. Yes, you can have multiple types of apps that you can download and push across the board. This works for desktop and basically also IoT or handheld, if you want, industry, as well as mobile devices. Yeah. And then you can also host your apps. You create your own store in the store, host your apps, as well as the apps that you purchase from the store into a store in the store at Microsoft Cloud, right? And your users will have to log in there and purchase them. The way users log into these private stores is by using an Azure Active Directory account, right? An org ID. If you're using Office 365 or Intune today, you'll know what this is. But that's basically how you do that. You can do federated or cloud only, but you will have to have org ID in all scenarios for mobile, except for the handheld scenarios. Yes?
Will you be able to push apps that you purchase or that are available in the store to your devices?
Yes, and make them required,
Yes.
and silently uninstall them, and those kind of things. Yes, we'll talk about that. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Access to Windows Store apps.
Yes.
Means that the company has to purchase them before,
Yes.
and user will be free to use it.
Yes. Right. And you have mixed scenarios, right? If you allow an org ID and bring your own scenario, you allow the user to activate his phone with an MSA and buy applications through the store on his own dime. That is okay. You can at the same time have a org ID, and when the user wants to buy the org store, they will have to switch to the org ID. I think if I go to this store on my desktop here, right? And I go to settings, you'll see I'm now logged in with this MSA, right? alainme@hotmail.com. But if I would have a second org ID, I would be able to click on that, and my categories in the store would change for me, the ones that I could see. So I did show you the store already. So the business store is new, right? It's a web-based interface that you can go in and log in. You will always have to log in with an Azure account, an org ID, into the business store. You will have to register your organization, log in with that org ID. The org ID also becomes controller if you have a development team within your organization. You will have multiple roles, etc., right? A purchaser and a manager and a developer, etc. They will need an org ID to log into this environment and manage your enterprise integration with the store as such, right? It provides functionality for you, and I have a walkthrough. I'll show you some of the screens, functionality for you to purchase applications and then point these applications to different places. You'll be able to say they go into my category business store, they go into my MDM system, or I'm going to actually download them, because I have a number of devices where I want to install this app on the device without it being connected to the organ. Yes?
So if you sign in your own ID and then they purchase something from the App Store, then that employee moves on, is there a way of releasing the license back?
Yes. There's license management. You can reclaim the licenses. That's what you're asking, right? You have a BYOD, the user downloads and installs an app. I don't know what app, and it's $5 app or something like that. And you own the license, you will unenroll them from the system, and you will get the license back into your system. You can use it for another user. So we're trying to support as many scenarios as possible, because we know users or companies have multiple ways of trying to manage this as such, right? It's also important for other types of, I don't know if educational organizations are here, for example, right? You have students with apps and you want to reclaim those apps, those kind of things. That will all be kind of supported. It works across all these Windows devices, right? From IoT up to, what's it called, Surface, and so forth, and who knows, maybe in server one day too. So a private online store is very simple. As I said, you log into the store, you register, you start to purchase applications. That can be free applications or for pay applications. You can use a correct payment method that you use, PO or credit card or whatever is custom within your organization to purchase these applications. You purchase a number of licenses. If the license, you will always have to sign a license agreement in that environment with the ISV that you license from, right? We enable ISVs to enable this, and there are special APIs if you want to license applications to others to enable integration into the business store and enable license management for the users, right? And then you add the apps to your category. The user will go into the store app that I just showed you, and we'll see a category Contoso. We'll click on it, and we'll see these applications for them and can install them from there. And now they can run these applications, etc. From an infrastructure perspective, it's purely cloud-based. There's no on-premises infrastructure needed at all. It's all done in the cloud. There's no MDM, no management requirement, etc. It's low cost. It's basically free for you, right, to use this, apart from paying for apps if there are for-pay apps, obviously, right? Apps will automatically update to the devices. If a new version becomes available through the store services, it will automatically update on these devices, etc. There is very little control you have over that. But it's low cost, it's low maintenance, it's easy, right? If that's all you want to do, it's a great solution. You can also upload your own apps into this cloud, right? You write your app for your user, you upload it, it's available in your category, nobody else has visibility to your apps and can download them or install them, only your accounts have access to it. Yes?
Is the updating done through the store or is that done through another?
No, there are basically, if you look at the store on the device, there are two components. One is the store service, and the other one is the store app, which shows you the UI, if you want, on the store, right? The store service in the background is the one that does the updating. And this is... Yes, and you will, as an administrator, you won't have a lot of visibility to it, but you can configure that, and a little bit about that. Because the app service is actually the one that does the license management on the device as well as the updating of the application on the device. And you had a question too.
We have a mobile banking app, and if we were to, prior to putting it out to the public, consumers, we put it to internal employees for testing. Would you recommend having like a beta version of that app in the store, or would there be a way to kind of release that within kind of the business version of
Okay.
the store prior to the consumer?
Right. So the question you have is, we are developing an app. It's actually an app that is for other companies or consumers. We do want to distribute a beta version of the app to internal people because they want to be we want them to be able to test it, right?
We'll add like new features, swipe in and stuff.
Yep. Yep. So you can do that already today, and that will be continuing in Windows 10. You can go multiple ways. One way is to upload a beta version of your app and then assign MSAs or live IDs to that app, and only those MSA accounts that have a Windows device will be able to see the app and download the app. You provide them a hidden URL or to that app via email or whatever, right? That's how we do it. When I test an internal Microsoft app, I will get a hidden URL in an email, and I'll click on it, and it will install from the store actually onto my device, and I can test it and give feedback. That's one way to do it. The advantage of that is that once it's done, you can upgrade your app in the store, and it becomes a store app automatically. So you're already there, so to speak. You can obviously go another way, and that is by installing it from an internal website, the SharePoint site or something like that. Sign the app with your proper certificate to sign the app, put it up there, and then the app will run on the device. To be able to do that, you need or a Symantec signing certificate, or you can create your own signing certificate as long as you're able to distribute the full chain from the root certificate up to the user certificate so that the phone trusts the app. If the phone doesn't trust the app, it will not run on the device. And that last piece is Windows 10 only at this point. Other question?
I know in the past, getting that side loading certificate took a long time. Symantec, and it was a deterrent to some developers.
Absolutely.
Is there a faster way to get people developing or to get those certificates?
I just explained it to the gentleman, right? In Windows 10, you'll be able to have your own certificate. You need to make sure that the devices that run that app or want to run that app have root up to user certificate. So the full chain. Otherwise, if you don't have the root certificate on the device will not trust the application and will not run. When you go on an online or an online with mobile device management scenario, right, you can actually do the same thing. You go into the business store, you buy your apps there, you license them, and then instead of saying, I create a category, you say, I'm going to link them to my MDM system. Works with Windows Intune, works with Mobile Iron, AirWatch, SAP Avaria, Citrix, Zen Mobile, and many others. They are working already today on this infrastructure, right, to support Azure AD accounts or Org ID accounts in this infrastructure, as well as support this license management form of applications that sit in your MDM environment as such. The infrastructure is cloud-based or on-premise. You can choose, because you can actually download the apps and bring them offline, right? And then add them to a device through your MDM system or through a provisioning package, which is a package that you create with a new tool, which is called the Image and Configuration Designer. It's part of the ADK. You can download that as such today to create packages like this, and then add the app into that package and provision the device. If you are in a very secure environment, or if you're in an environment where there is no network or no external network, that may be a good solution, like with handheld devices in a factory or what have you, or in a very secure environment, let's call it that way, where there is no internet. You don't want internet, then you create these provisioning packages that can be installed on a mobile device as well as on a desktop, right? But the provisioning packages are a little different on a desktop versus a mobile device. They can be installed just as a package that sits on the server, and people use an NFC tag. They tap the device and it installs the package, or they use a SD card, which is sometimes used in these environments, right? The user comes with an SD card, plugs it into the handheld, and there is his environment with his apps, etc. Because it's a dynamic runtime provisioning environment that is available. You had a question about?
Those provisioning packages, is there a way to secure those with like a certificate?
Yes. You can sign them, encrypt them, right? And then it's not required, right? But you can sign them, and there are other ways for you to say, once the provisioning package is on the system, you cannot remove it, or you can only add signed packages that are signed with this certificate. Again, get the certificate on the device and no other ones. You can require a PIN to enable it if you have a shift system, right? And the device is being used by multiple people, and it needs to move around to these people. They can all have their own provisioning package and their own code, right? When the device boots with their provisioning package, they need to enter the unlock code for that provisioning package, and voila, is their environment with their Exchange account, if they would have that, or their apps or whatever, right? So this can be on-premise or online. And you have a question, sir? Yeah, it can. I don't know who the competitor is. You can name them. Well, yeah, we're working with AirWatch and MobileIron and Citrix and Symantec and even RIM with their MDM system, right? They will all support this. When exactly, at what time, I don't know. I know most the ones like AirWatch, MobileIron already have beta tools available, and we'll test this with some of their customers. So if it's one of those, I would go to their account manager and ask, is there any way we can test this? All right, so they will enable you to do that. So I talked about this, right? This is offline provisioning. You create this provisioning package, and then you deploy it to these mobile devices. A provisioning package can also be used very simply in a BYOD environment, right, where you just want people to register the device with an Azure Active Directory and an MDM system. You don't need to give them difficult instructions, right? You have an NFC tag around the company. They just tap their phone against the NFC tag, and the magic happens, so to speak, right? Or there could be a kiosk with a USB cable. You could do lots of devices with the kiosk, right? Because with a USB, you could actually provision a package in the UBI environment, out-of-the-box experience, right, UBI, so that the package is applied to the device, but the device doesn't go through the full UBI. The user gets the device from you. This is a corporate liable scenario, obviously, right? It's a device that you have bought for them. They open the box with everything in there. They start their phone or their mobile device, and the UBI takes them to the next steps. They need to authenticate, obviously, because you're not going to include their passwords and stuff like that in a package, right? They need to authenticate against the services, and apps are installed, etc. So you can do multi or bulk enrollment of devices as such. Questions about this? Different scenarios, apart from the questions that you all asked already?
I guess just each package is installed per user, right?
No, you can have a generic package. It can actually work across a phone and a desktop. It doesn't include the user's identity or anything like that. Obviously, you can create packages for different groups of users or types of users, because that can be different, right? That's what you're saying, right? You don't include the identity of the user in a provisioning package.
But like a user logs on to the phone or whatever, do they have to wait for the app to be installed if they haven't used that on the device before? Like in a system where it's fully sharing if you're on your different devices.
So if you're in a shift system, right? User 1 uses it from, I don't know, 1 to 8, and then you have the following shift and so forth. They would re-provision the package for them. The previous user would remove his SD card and shut down the device, or as such, right? The next user puts an SD card in, if that's the way it's done, right? But puts the SD card in and boots the device, and everything comes up for that user. Everything is included in the package. If they need to open the device with their PIN code, right? Once the device is provisioned for them, they would open the device with their PIN code, and that would authenticate them against the system and as such.
Doesn't that take a fair bit of time?
It takes some time, yes. Yeah, it takes some time.
What about the scenario that with current, Win32 apps, when you install it, it's install for current user, install for all users. Is there an install for all users option here? A shared machine.
It's a good question. On a mobile SKU, you don't have multiple users, and you have multiple users. Let me explain myself. You only have one corporate user. And so in the corporate container on a mobile device, there will be only one active mobile user at that point in time. There may be multiple consumer identities. On a bring your own device, a user can come in and have a Windows phone that is activated with an MSA, and he may have Outlook.com email and stuff like that, but he also has Gmail, which is another identity that's kept on the device, and he may have Facebook on the device, right? Let's not forget that these three groups that I just called out, and there is Twitter, and there is Bank of America, and there's lots of other people who will create what we call FIDO-compliant identity providers, right? The new Passport in Windows is a FIDO-compliant system. It requires an identity provider, so Google will have a FIDO-compliant identity provider, so will Facebook, Twitter, etc. Passport does away with passwords, right? The way people get access to their account is by, they call it a motion on Windows, and on other devices there can be biometrics, right? It could be iris recognition, face recognition, it could be a fingerprint, or it could be a PIN or a password. You can choose that.
Let's say this is a true universal app that is installed on mobile devices, but it's also installed on static devices. The multi-user scenario in that case is
On a desktop scenario, you mean?
Same app, universal app.
You will be able to still Windows 32 app on Windows 10, install it for all users or one specific user, yeah. Well, that's a Win32 app.
But a universal app is always going to be installed per user.
It's going to be installed per user, but it can be multi-user if there are multiple accounts. But on the device, it can be used by multiple users, yes. Right. I'll talk a little bit about management and how you limit that. But in the mobile world, there's no such thing as multiple corporate accounts or Win32 apps, right? Doesn't exist. So this is yes, this is a screenshots, right? Mock-ups, not even final UI, but you will be able to sign up for a business store on Microsoft.com, right? You'll sign in with Azure AD. You'll be able to see these apps, and let's say we're buying the PowerPoint app, right? The one that is central in the middle there. We're going to buy that one. It will give you an option to choose, do I want to buy it for online or offline use as such? These are the conditions. If there is a price, you will have to click buy the app now and pay the price for that with your pricing or payment mechanism that you have chosen when you registered for this environment. It will buy the app for you, right? Or you will buy the app. And then you'll be in your catalog of apps. You'll be able to see the apps that you've licensed, how many people are using the app or have it installed. You'll see how much it costed, etc., etc. It's very usual, simple kind of walkthrough of a web-based interface to purchase and license apps as such, right? Now let's move to, you have now all these apps, you have developed them, you have a category, or you have downloaded them to a store of your own catalog on your MDM system. As a large organization, you probably have a division of labor, and that all larger organizations have, right? A can buy, but B cannot buy, etc., etc. So you'll be able to have multiple roles in Azure AD for your account that are using and are in the store, so to speak, to do different roles within the store. And then you'll also be able to have multiple roles in the Dev Center for uploading these apps and developing apps, registering for Visual Studio, having a developer ID, etc. People that can unlock their phones if they need it as a developer phone, etc. So there is a lot of identity management available for larger organizations, much more flexibility than we had before. And for license management, again, you are going in the store, right, with the user ID. You have purchased app, licensed app, or free apps, LOB apps, and you will also be able to reclaim apps from a user. If you unenroll the user from your environment, or the user leaves the organization and you allow them to unenroll themselves, you'll see that the license becomes available again. For a user who just walks off and goes and thinks he can continue to use that app, the phone will check back with the licensing server on a regular basis to see if the app is still licensed or not, and will be able, and then the app will be disabled if they're no longer part of your organization. Yes?
Notice that there are APIs available. Does that also apply like this PowerShell commandos?
There are no PowerShell commandos on mobile. There are on the desktop.
Maybe for managing the store.
Um,
I want to do a bulk unenroll. I had some employees on short-term.
no, at this point,
I want to get them all done in a sprint.
yes, no. What you mean is you want to do something like in Azure AD with PowerShell.
If I do my roles in Azure AD, I guess I can run it.
Yeah, no. As far as I know, I don't think there are PowerShell commandos. It's a good idea, though. It's a good idea to enable this. I do most of the stuff in Azure too with PowerShell. It's easier than the user interface. The user interface gets slow and stuff like that. You raised your hand at the same time.
Is there a check frequency by default to reclaim the license?
Yes.
Like for PMS, for instance, or is it something that you can customize?
It's a default check frequency. I believe it's 10 days. Yeah. So, and you mean the check frequency, the frequency the phone checks with the licensing service to see if it's if the license is still available. Yeah. 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 So if you really want it off, you need to actively unenroll or partially wipe the device, right? If it's a critical application that you really want to get off for somebody who walked off, you need to pursue that on your own. Yes.
So the first thing that comes to mind is within that business store, is there a way to track usage?
Yes.
So
right? So you'll have fundamental, basic usage. So the usage of your apps, who is it using it, when did they use it last, on what device are they using it, right? Those basic things will be available in the web interface on the store. If you want more information, I'll cover that, you'll need an MDM system to do that. Right? Other questions? Yes? That's a good question. There are, yes, there are. You have controls to define on a user and a device, but you will need an MDM system to be able to say, install on this device for this user, but not on another device, right? That's kind of the question you're asking, right? So in terms of policies, App Locker is the generic name that we use today to control who can install what apps on what device, right? And if they can install it or cannot install it, what applications they cannot install, not just the applications that you have licensed. If you don't like, and I have nothing against WhatsApp, but if you don't like WhatsApp, it's one that comes up a lot in enterprise discussions. You can block WhatsApp based on attributes of the application. It could be publisher, could be app name, could be version, what have you, or unique identifier of the app in the store, those kind of things. But you'll be able to define who can use what app on what device, as you said, right? As that is something you want to be able to control. And then updates are also controllable. You can, from online and offline, apps will automatically update, except in some scenarios where there is no Azure AD. It's a really offline scenario where you have a handheld device again, right? Never connects to the internet, never leaves the premises or something like that. It's fully under your control. The app will not check every 10 days if the license is still available. It will just be there, but it will never update. If you want to update it, you will actively have to update it through a provisioning package, or you will actively have to update it through an MDM system. Question, sir?
So AppLocker today works through GPO. So does that mean you're going to have two different management paradigms?
No, I'm not talking about. So we have generically adopted this name of AppLocker. Across the board, you can manage it with MDM or System Center or GPOs, but GPOs only on a desktop, not on a mobile device. Right? And then, I don't know if there is a good MDM session that's coming up after this one or the one after lunch, I think, that is talking about that and the GPO bridge and so forth on desktops, those kind of things, they will be covered in that session. Was there another question there? All right. And then, so you have you can set policy on automatic update, not update. You can lock a certain application to a certain version because that is the version you want to support. You don't want to support any other applications, and then update them as they are needed, right? And then in terms of inventory, you can now see all applications on the phone. If it's a bring your own device, you'll be able to see all the applications that the private user is using on his device, right? You can even uninstall those applications as such. I would do that carefully, right? And certainly compliant with any legislation you have in your country, because there is lots of legislation around privacy, etc., in this space. But you have the option, right? To do that and to collect information about these applications. You'll see that this is a system app, right? Outlook, or a setting app, or if it's a line of business app or a store app, and all the attributes of the application. I didn't put them all on here, but there are a ton of attributes that you can read from the applications to properly identify them. And then also the usage and on what devices they are being installed, etc., by the users. As such, you can keep track of that. Works with any MDM system, but you will need an MDM system to see all this type of information. And then enterprise data protection. It's a generic name that we came up with, and that's probably going to change by the time we release, right? But with enterprise data protection, it's connected to Azure AD or to Identity. It will generate encryption keys, and it will encrypt all the corporate data and create a sandbox for those types of applications, right? A container for those types of applications. You will have unlightened applications like Outlook and Word that can function in both container environments, private versus corporate. But anything that sits in the corporate side will be encrypted with the enterprise data protection keys that you can manage. Again, MDM dependent. But here you can say, these are my trusted applications. They belong to the enterprise container. And they can run and they get access to the enterprise container. Other applications cannot, right? And then you allow installation of trusted applications, and you can control data sharing between trusted applications. You have policies to say, this app, you can copy and paste to another app or share data any way you want. With this app, you may be able to copy, but if we paste, and that's an exception policy you can set, we'll bring up a pop-up that says, you're actually not allowed to do this, but you can do it if you really want to, and then force the paste. It will generate an audit trail and an audit alert to the MDM server saying this user did that. Now, there are users in the organization that probably want to copy something out of a Word document and then tweet it, right? Because they work in the social media department or something. So you need to be carefully looking at these types of sharing policies as such. There's also media control in EDP. In terms of on-device itself, where can a trusted application store data? Not on the SD card, but on the internal BitLocker encrypted storage, yes, but not on the SD card, for example. The app cannot be installed or cannot store data there. Yes?
I'm assuming you can remove the enterprise data in case of a lost device too.
I don't understand your question. You can?
So if you have enterprise data on your phone, the phone gets lost or stolen, you can, and the phone checks in, it will take the enterprise data off of it.
So you can partially wipe a device or enterprise wipe a device. We'll remove all the encryption keys, certificates, authentication, IDs, apps, data, Word documents, what have you, that are in the enterprise container, right? We'll just remove them. You can fully wipe a device, everything on the device. If you want that, you can remotely lock a device. You can remotely find a device. And I'm all speaking from an MDM perspective, right? I'm not speaking from a live ID. So with your corporate environment, you can find it. You can lock it for a stolen situation where the user will not, or the finder will not be able to reset the device in any way, right? So that it becomes useless to them. Did I miss anything? You can reset the password. You have another question? Field fencing, do you mean geofencing? Geofencing is...
Work within the factory, but not outside the factory.
Yes, there are some abilities to do that, or connect to a certain network or not to the other network, or disable Wi-Fi while you're in the factory, those kind of things, right? So there is a context manager on the phone who will be able to do that based on the context the phone is in. Could be location, could be other things too. And then Edge, aka Spartan, is the browser. It's the only browser on the device. You're going to miss out on the phone, by the way. But it's the only browser on the device, and you can manage that browser too. It, again, is across devices, the same browser management capabilities on the device as well as on the desktop, etc. So when these policies can roam across these two devices as such. Right. Any questions? No, that's nice. Because basically I'm done. You can find me on a blog with the mobility guys. Please evaluate Windows 10. For developer sessions, go to the build. There's lots of developer sessions there. Who's using Windows? Yeah, question.
Can you talk any about this process of on-premise with big man Indian that's coming and do that?
I don't, I'm not allowed to talk about any SCCM vNext versions, right? Yeah. At this point, we have released an SP Beta 2 for SCCM 2012 R2, I believe, right? Who has Windows Phone 8.1 in their organization? Who's willing to come over here and tell me why they are using Windows Phone 8.1 on the phone? You, sir? Just a quick 1 minute, 2 minute thing.
Okay. We have primarily iOS and Android devices, and iPads to the majority of our sales force. What we found is there are operational people that work in some of our manufacturing installations and that work in some of the business functions that want to develop a device that presents a similar set of features that they're able to do their work. We found that Lumia 65 was the device that was able to give us a low-cost device that still provided all the functional features that people use. From what I've seen this week, I think we've now got a case to go back and look at the higher-end devices, especially the US labs, and the fact that the iOS apps that we've already developed internally will now run on the sort of virtual devices. So we need to take a long look at Windows 10 this side.
Yeah. Are you managing it with a tool? What do you manage those devices with a tool? Mobile device management tool?
We've just deployed AirWatch.
Okay.
So I'm really interested in now going back and talking to AirWatch and finding out what they're going to do to make it easier for Windows 10 and how we can get the best from putting their land in Windows 10.
Okay, great. Let's thank him for his courage to stand up and talk about what he's doing. And thank all of you to staying this long, but I'm going to give this phone to this guy here. Thank you.